When you are young, and I was only 17 when I witnessed the breakup of David's marriage, you find these things puzzling. At least I did. I thought in marriage you came together to find something that was bigger than either of you individually. When I saw a marriage dissolve, I could not understand the forces that could bring it to an end. I knew some couples that were not happy in their marriages, and I knew a few wives that just would never be happy under any circumstances, but I figured you worked to improve things and find what drew you to each other in the first place. At least that's what I thought. I could not understand how two people who seemed so happy together would suddenly fall apart. We lived in a community made up mostly of summer cottages by the river. A few of the houses had been converted to year-round living, but most lacked basic insulation and heat, so most of my friends lived elsewhere 9 months of the year, as did I. Still, my family spent most weekends there throughout the winter, using the wood stove to warm the room. I considered it my home, and any other place I lived was just temporary until I got back to where I belonged. David and his wife, Barb, had 2 kids about my age and a little younger. I didn't know it at the time, but they were coming up on their 20th anniversary. David had decided to surprise Barb and had rented a ballroom at the hotel in town. He invited all their friends and relatives and told them not to mention it to Barb so she would be surprised. He hired a band and arranged for an open bar with lots of food. He told everyone, "No gifts, just come and celebrate with us." David never saw it coming. David came home from work on a Friday just 2 weeks and a day before the party and found Barb in the kitchen pulling a meatloaf out of the oven. She was wearing a little black dress that he'd never seen before. It was short and low cut. She was wearing pearls and high heels. David immediately assumed that he'd forgotten something and said, "Sorry, dear, are we going out?" "I'll get changed." Barb looked uncomfortably at David and said, "Not us, David, just me." "I'm going out." "You look awfully good for a night out with the girls," he said. It was more a question than a statement. Barb hesitated. "David, I have a date. I'll be late getting home, so I fixed you dinner before I left." David's world came to a crashing halt. "A date? Barb, what are you talking about? You're a married woman. Married women don't go on dates." "David, I know this is going to be hard for you, but try to understand. I'm not getting any younger. A man I work with asked me out and I'm going. This may be my last chance to feel young again and know that I can still be attractive to men." "This must be a bad joke. You're not serious, are you?" "What do you mean attractive to men? You know you have always been attractive to me. I've loved you since I first set eyes on you." "Do you mean other men? Why do you need to feel attractive to other men? Isn't it enough that I love you with all my heart?" "David, please try to understand. This is just something that I need to do." Barb could not look her husband in the eyes. She knew she could not justify what she was about to do, but she knew just as surely that she needed to do it. She needed to feel young, sexy, and carefree one more time, and she had convinced herself that David would understand. She was lying to herself, and she was trying to avoid telling him the whole truth. David hesitated for a moment, but he couldn't keep it in. "What are you going to do on this date?" Barb looked about the room nervously and said, "He's taking me to dinner and then dancing." She hesitated. "Then I'm going back to his hotel room and I'm going to sleep with him." She finally looked at him. "I'm sorry, David, but this is just something I need to do. I do love you and I'm not leaving you. When I get home, everything will be as it was. I promise. You'll see." David thought he was having a heart attack. Did he just hear his wife say she was going to sleep with another man? "No, absolutely not. Have you lost your mind?" Just then, a car horn blew outside and Barb said, "That must be him. I have to go." As she reached the door, she turned and gave a worried smile. "I promise when I get home I'll make it up to you. Everything will be as it was. You'll see." With that, she left. She couldn't have been more wrong. David watched her walk to the stranger's car. The man got out, walked around to the passenger's side, and opened the door for Barb. She gave him a long kiss and got into the car. As the man closed the door, he looked over at David, who was standing in the doorway to his home, and he smirked. The creep walked around to the driver's side and got in. As the car's engine started, Barb turned to look at David with a smile on her face. But it faded as she saw her husband of 20 years standing in the doorway, broken and with tears flowing down his cheeks. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to apologize, but the car pulled away, and with it, David's life as he knew it was over. The kids were gone for the weekend, and David was alone. For a while, he tried to convince himself it was all a bad joke, and that his wife of 20 years would come back through the door laughing. If it was a joke, it was a sick joke. David sat there in the living room for 2 hours until he decided he could not stay there tonight. He began to pack, and as he packed, he filled his car. He started with clothes and then some books, the computer, and a few personal items. Every time he would put something in the car, he would sit back down in the living room and hope that his wife would walk through the door and say that she had changed her mind. She never did. At 2 in the morning, he decided that by then she had gone through with it, so David got into his car and he drove away. It was no longer his home. Barb was no longer his wife. In the next few weeks, David would wonder how and why this happened. Who was she listening to? Who was filling her head with this insane, destructive crap? Was it one of her girlfriends? Was it that creep? Has this been going on for some time, and for how long? Was this the first time, or just the first time she was honest with him? He had no answers and just kept spinning the questions over in his brain. He had difficulty sleeping and couldn't concentrate at work. He was a wreck. Of course, I knew nothing of this at the time. I was on the other side of the same community going about my usual teenage business. My parents heard the gossip but told me nothing of any of it. A week later, my father comes to me and says, "Go over to David Jenkins' house and help him load his truck." That's all Dad said. He could have said more. I got there and started helping. I noticed we packed this chair and not that table. We packed a dresser, but not the bed. I asked David why he was leaving half his stuff. The other men shot me a look. David just said, "Jake, I'm divorcing my wife." "Thanks, Dad. You could have said a little more." After that, I worked in silence. I carried what I was told to carry, and I kept my mouth shut. We packed his tools and we left the kitchen untouched. Then I rode with David to the storage locker he'd rented and helped him unload the truck. What do you say to a grown man who is 30 years your senior when his life has just ended? What did a kid my age know about marriage anyway? In time, Barb moved out and David moved back in. Being the man he was, he started to prepare the house for winter. David planned to live there year-round and let Barb have the house in the city. I guess that way his kids could visit and he'd have space for them. It would be Spartan, but that suited David. Our community had some interesting, if not very typical, resources. Some of the men had gone together to buy a 2-car garage that they equipped with woodworking machines that they shared. I had a growing interest in working with wood, so they let me in and gave me instructions. In time, I got to know David better. He was no longer the man I'd known before Barb had her date. He stopped laughing and telling jokes. His kindness never faded, but his joy had left him. David had made a lot of the furniture in his home, and he made a particularly nice Windsor chair. He thought of making a chair as a step in the process of building a marriage and a family. David wanted to do more than write a check when it came to providing for his family, and he was good at it. David remained that empty shell of a man for about a year. I'd see him at the shop or on the street. He was always kind, but never happy. His kids never wanted to talk about it, so I just gave them space. After about a year, David started to seem just a bit better. The changes were small and gradual. There was a smile and thank you to the man who ran the corner store. He held the door open for a neighbor and made small talk. Once I caught him humming a tune while he worked the lathe. He remained quiet and withdrawn, but he was slowly getting better. One day, while working in the shop with David, I decided I'd tell him a story I'd heard. I don't know why I did it. I just wanted to have some kind of conversation with him. I certainly don't know why I chose the story I told. We were working quietly in the shop and I said, I've been thinking about how intellect meets humor and what's required to make a really good comeback. I mean, you can practice a joke, but a comeback has to be spontaneous. He gave me an odd look. I get them a lot. I read recently that Churchill and Lady Astor had some kind of running feud, and once she said to him, Mr. Churchill, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your tea. Without a moment's hesitation, Churchill replied, Madam, if I were your husband, I'd drink it. I was doing my best Churchill impersonation and laughed just at the telling of the joke. David cracked up. It was the first time I'd seen him laugh since his divorce. It occurred to me later that I had probably chosen the worst of all possible jokes to tell him, but he enjoyed it anyway, and I started to think there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We talked for a few minutes, and then David looked at me and said, I never thanked you for helping me move. Well, actually he did, and I told him so. After a moment he asked, Did I ever tell you the story of my divorce? Well, clearly he never did, and I never asked. He then sat down with me and told me the whole story. There are some things a guy that age just does not need to know. I thought about how he was blindsided, how he thought he had a loving wife who shared his values, and how without warning, it all blew up on him. That's the stuff that gives a young man nightmares. He said to me, after a few weeks I started thinking that maybe she was right. Maybe, if I really loved her, I could get past this and we could put the marriage back together. I sat down with her and right away she started in on me. I was selfish. I was cruel. I didn't understand how a woman feels. I thought only of myself. She really got to me, and just as I was getting ready to apologize, she said to me, I should never have told you. If you didn't know, you wouldn't be upset, and everything would be fine. That's when I knew she would do it again, and the next time she would do it behind my back. I got up, told her to sign the divorce papers, and I walked away. It took me a long time to process that information. It took months. All I could think was that David never saw it coming. He walked into his house one night with their anniversary party planned, and then his whole world blew up around him. What made it worse is that I doubt Barb ever imagined that one day she'd betray him when she took her vows, forsaking all others, till death do us part. How does a young man select a wife when he can't see this ticking time bomb buried so deep that even she doesn't know it's there? I asked David about that, and he thought for a minute. Jake, I can't tell you how to know your wife will keep her vows. I don't think Barb lacked character or values. I think something just scared her. She saw herself getting older and lost sight of what was important. Maybe I let her down and didn't comfort her enough, but I always tried to be there whenever I knew something was bothering her. The thing is, you can't be responsible for what a person keeps inside themselves. In marriage, you have to talk and share both your joy and your fears. David was staring off into space. To be honest, I still don't know why she did it. I guess it's what she wanted, but she broke my heart that night. I was thinking about what David had said when he leaned forward and offered me a view that I've carried with me ever since. He said, Jake, when I look around, I see two kinds of people in the world. I see builders and collectors. Builders try to create something that didn't exist before, and to do it, they put a part of themselves into everything they build. In the process, they see their own worth in the worth of what they build. If you are a builder, then you are a builder in all aspects of your life. You are a builder in your relationships, in your work, in your play, and in how you view your role in society. Builders know that they cannot build two things in conflict with one another because each is a part of themselves, and they know that it takes both time and commitment to build something of value. Collectors surround themselves with things that already have value. They may enhance the value of what they collect, but in the end, they draw their own worth from the value of the things they collect from the world around them. The irony is that many collectors think they are builders because they are building a collection, but that isn't what makes you a builder. David paused for a moment. Jake, you need to know yourself. I'm a builder. I can't help it. I thought that Barb was too, but in the end, she needed to find her own worth in the desires of another man. I couldn't build a marriage with someone who looked outside it for validation. I thought about what David told me, and I would continue to think about it in the days, weeks, and months ahead. I thought about builders and collectors, the kind of man I thought I was, and the life that I wanted to live. I thought about what it meant to build a life with someone, to find myself in her love, and to raise a family someday. I finally looked at him and I asked, "Would you teach me to build those Windsor chairs?" David had friends across the community, and they never turned their backs on him. With their help and support, he slowly rebuilt himself and his life, until about a year after our conversation, he was again the man I knew before the night of Barb's date. His kids seemed happier too. He still needed to speak with Barb from time to time, but he limited those conversations to matters involving the kids. There were decisions to be made about colleges, cars, and such. As the family healed, the kids started bringing their dates by the house to meet Dad. He became the parent his kids wanted their friends to know. Their mother remained bitter and forever blamed David for their divorce. She remarried, but it didn't last long. Barb continued to search for meaning in her life, while those things that meant the most slowly slipped between her fingers. In time, David heard less and less from his ex-wife, and he thought about her hardly at all. You see, there was this young man in the neighborhood who David had taught to build chairs, and this young man had an aunt about David's age. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.